Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a special Juneteenth broadcast brought to you by OshiFriedChicken.com. The CEO of which is here with me now, Satsu2Cents, the Lord of Pennies. Hey, Satsu.
What's good, man?
I got a day off. I'm amongst friends. I've got some water here and recovering from another migraine. Yes, apologies, everyone. I might be a little off today. Lots of stress the last few days, and I guess a migraine decided to visit itself upon me last night, and so I'm still a little bit in the recovery mode, but I'm much better now than I was a couple of hours ago. So that all aside, Satsu, how are you doing?
Pretty good, man. I've been very busy. Very busy.
How is the wee one? I haven't heard a report on the wee one in quite a while.
She's doing good, man. Her vocabulary is expanding like crazy. She's been going to school, and she's currently in summer camp doing her thing. And
ooh, good.
You can semi-ask her questions and get a somewhat of an answer now. She can identify things a lot better. She's growing very quickly.
Excellent. And how is the better half?
Oh, she's doing good. She's being squishy as usual.
Squishy as usual.
Yeah.
Let's get some hellos here real quick, and then we'll get into it. Dumb Beard, good morning. Noah Sencio, good morning. Yvette Monique, good morning. Michael Coffey, good morning. Molly Okami, good morning. Kiefer Dam, good morning to you. And thank you, Kiefer Dam, as always, for providing the link to the fundraiser. But today's special fundraiser, everybody, and the focus, at least partially, of today's broadcast. Satsu, if you do not know, has a business. And would you like to know about this business? I will tell you about his business right now. This is my friend Satsu, a.k.a. Chef Tyrone, founder, owner, and CEO of Oishi Fried Chicken, LLC, featuring a new line of signature spice mixes. Chef Tyrone's homemade blends are the perfect gateway to delicious fried chicken or any other protein you might prefer. These recipes were painstakingly tested in Tyrone's home kitchen to bring you all the fantastic flavors you and your family can enjoy. The current flavor lineup includes original, spicy, lemon garlic herb, barbecue rub, and taco seasoning. You can buy individual packs of your favorite flavors or save some money with a variety bundle, all through the online store. And Oishi Fried Chicken ships nationwide. Go to www.oishifc.com and order today. There you are. The brand new ad.
I feel like I need to pay you for that one. That's pretty good.
No, and by the way, this stream is not sponsored. Satsu's just my friend, and I have absolutely no problem in promoting his company. And so as Satsu, tell us about what the fundraiser for your endeavor is at the top of the chat box. What is that to fund for?
Well, right now we are gearing up to set up a display at our first actual festival event of the summer. And I say first because I'm going to try to get to as many as we can. But this is the first one that we're setting up for. And we're going to have a display set up and be trying to sell our spices out there and just trying to gear up for it. It's the initial entry fee and everything that we got to take care of is a bit much because obviously it's our first thing. We got to get all the materials and stuff. So you can either support us by donating. You can support us by going to Oishi FC and buying spices to try them out. Either one works. Or if you can't support in either of those ways, just share it with as many people as you can. And that's just as good. So that's what we got going right now. We'll be taking pictures, and I have my brother there, who's a photographer. He'll be taking video and stuff like that, and I'll show you guys how it went, and maybe we'll live stream and stuff so you guys can kind of hang out with us a bit or whatever. We haven't really planned that out yet, but it's going to be the first actual event of us getting out into the public, so hopefully all goes well. But yeah, that's it.
All right. And after the stream, guys, I'm going to post that same ad onto Twitter along with a link to the fundraiser. So if you see that, if you could share that out and retweet it and all that good stuff. But in the meantime, take a look at the fundraiser at the top of the chat box. If you can donate, please do so. But if you can't, that's fine. Share that out as well. And thank you, Kiefer Dam, for posting that as always. A couple more hellos here. Simon Willikins, good morning. Mike Savage, good morning. Derek LaRue, thank you so much, Derek, as always, for your continued support and generosity. Very much appreciated. Hope you're having a good day and hope you enjoy the show. Some Amniel Nation. Good morning, Attack Alpaca. Good morning, Miranda Stone. Good morning, Queen of the Discord. I still have to cook up that Miranda Stone Queen stinger. Still trying to get that picture right. Got to get that picture right. I'll work on it though. Sabian 187. Good morning, Attorney Eris. Good morning, Matthew James. Good morning. This is Kyle. Good morning, Captain DN. Good morning, Vader 35. Good morning. Who else is here? Kiro Soldiers. I say good morning. Good morning to you. I think that's everybody. If I missed you, if you're lurking, if you're in the future, good morning. Oh, and somebody else just popped in. Let me get it here. Misinformation. Good morning. All right. So before we get into the TEDx talk, and by the way, guys, this is just going to be a straight TEDx discussion thing. Not going to do a bingo card. This is a special day. And what special day is it? Well, it's Juneteenth, or and I'll explain why I say this, and maybe some of you all can already tell. What I have tended to call it is also St. Floyd's Day, which is an unfortunate thing that I feel like I have to say, but I think it's apropos. But I wanted to, before we get into the question of reparations, which is what the focus of the most of this was be, I want to at least talk a bit with Satsu about Juneteenth. So as an ignorant Guaylo, as I was raised, I didn't know or had heard of Juneteenth as a concept until maybe, I might have heard of it earlier, but I think the first time that it had ever sort of entered my memory was sometime in my early 20s, so like college age or somewhere in there, and somebody talked about it. I never heard of it before. And for those of you that don't know, and this is my very, very brief summary take on the idea, Juneteenth effectively represents a date back in the 1800s, wherein the last of the people who lived under slavery were told of the Emancipation Proclamation, the end of slavery, and therefore effectively became the date slavery officially ended in every state in the United States. So Satsu, growing up for you, now I have it here, I have my notes that you are Black.
Allegedly.
Okay. Well, I'll take that. If that is your preferred identity. So as you identify as Black, how significant and or when did the idea of Juneteenth enter your world?
Hilariously enough, I think we're in the same boat.
Really?
Because I knew nothing of Juneteenth for quite a while. Like probably not even until I started initially coming up with the idea of making my first YouTube channel.
Okay.
Which, if you guys don't know, is now gone. It does not exist anymore. It is it has been destroyed.
I recall.
Yeah. So
like roundabouts, what, 2015, 2016?
Yeah. And even then, like, I had heard of it, but I didn't really, didn't really know what it was. Nobody around me. And I grew up in the hood, and I grew up around people of color my entire life. So it's you would think it would be a concept that came up, but it genuinely wasn't. It wasn't talked about at school. So it was just one of those things that I was just like, okay, apparently this is a thing. Weirdly enough, though, what it represents, though, I was aware of, and the date and all that stuff. I just didn't know there was something like that tied to it.
Okay. Yeah. Now, I just as a level set before we continue, recognizing and memorializing, let's say, the day that slavery really ended in America, setting aside the Emancipation Proclamation itself, I don't think is anything that shouldn't be commemorated. I think that makes perfect sense given this country's history and the idea that we are an evolving republic, and that, there should be some recognition of a changing from bad ideas to better ideas. That's kind of the whole point of the evolution of the Constitution and our rights and this country in general, and our ability to change over time. So there's no objection from me on the idea of Juneteenth as a commemorated day. It being a federal holiday, I could give or take, even though I'm getting a day off as a result of it. I'm kind of like, maybe, I suppose. But here's the issue that I have with it, is not so much the idea of Juneteenth, but the winds upon which it became a thing. Because like I said earlier, you could call it St. Floyd's Day, because what shoved this thing into existence did not feel at the time and still does not feel, and I think thus kind of poisons or sours the idea, is that it was pushed through on the energy of controversy, protest, and rancor in this country. It feels like, and again, this is just my sort of, subjective interpretation, it feels like it became a federal holiday as a massive act of virtue signaling. That, save for the controversy over George Floyd, the protests thereof, and everything else, and the hysteria that surrounded it, we wouldn't be here with this day off, with this federal holiday. And maybe that's just me, but it feels like it kind of will overshadow the legitimately worthy commemoration of such an event. But that's just my opinion. Satsu, what do you think?
I feel like that's fair. I mean, the situation. Oh my God, why is my sister calling me? Anyway, hold on. The situation with that was, I could imagine, as we probably all agree, is pretty overblown. There was like a lot going on with that, and everybody kind of had their viewpoints. But I mean, that's been kind of the situation with everything that's been going on the past, I don't know, 15 years now, where it seems like a lot of what under normal circumstances would be relatively worthy causes that most people could rally behind, getting blown out of proportion by the extremists and kind of tarnished in a way where it's like, this could be something that I could rally behind under most circumstances and not feel weird about it. But there's a bunch of fuckheads like at the forefront of this thing, and I don't want to be connected to them at all. So maybe not so so outspoken and support this thing.
Yeah, if this had been brought to life, let's say, through a more methodical or grassroots sort of organic way, instead of feeling like it was a reflex done to placate a mob, then maybe I wouldn't feel the way that I feel about it. I mean, it's functionally irrelevant. We have, it is what it is. We have what it is. There, it's never going to go away as a federal holiday. But like I say, I don't have a problem with its commemoration. I just have a bit of an issue with how it came to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get it. It's just, I don't know. There's so many things that, like I said, normally I would be like, yeah, if you ask me how you feel about this, I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty much on the side of, people who would generally believe that this is a bad or good thing or needs to be supported. But it's not that easy anymore, because it's what it comes with, the type of people who they allow to be at the forefront of these movements. And that's an important distinction, who they allow to be at the forefronts of these movements. Because a lot of these situations and a lot of these movements, their biggest problem is there is no room for internal scrutiny, where it's like, okay, like, obviously we're on the same page, but you guys need to fucking behave. Like, that y'all are making us look bad. Like, you can't even say that much. It's just like, they support us, they believe in what we believe in, all is permissible. And I'm just like, no, you need to step in and quell the bad actors. Like, it should be you. It shouldn't be your opposition. Your opposition should not be the ones that are stepping in to take care of the bad actors or point them out. It should be you, but that's not allowed. So
yeah, it's the my way or the highway thing. You're either on the right or the wrong side of history, et cetera, et cetera. And we were Satsu and I were talking about this a little bit before the show started, where, the tribalism, the tying your entire sense of self and identity to a cause or an ideology or one way of thinking, and anything that comes along that might question that or criticize that turns the critic not into someone who's just asking for clarification or just has a different opinion. No, they are inherently a bad person, because you have to be a good person, because if you're not a good person, then everything you've been doing makes you a villain, and you can't accept that, and on and on. And people that will take advantage of that as well, more than anything else. Cynics that, because I've said this any countless times before, in the heart of every person is the desire to be the good person in some way, shape, or form. Save for like maybe sociopaths or psychopaths. But even then, maybe they have some notion of themselves in a hero's light. And if you have that desire, but then you find somebody who's willing to exploit that desire to their own ends, or to start, drawing lines in the concrete that you cannot cross, then yeah, everything goes sideways. And that's a lot what we're seeing these days. But that being said, another subject that comes up along with Juneteenth and in relation to the end of slavery is reparations. And that is effectively, and I'll shorten it here, the question of whether or not the United States government owes a debt largely financial, or resolves down to being financial, because ultimately it's going to come out of the taxpayer, to the descendants of slaves from this country.
Well,
and,
hold on.
Yes.
Hold on.
Yes.
That's an interesting statement, to the descendants of slaves in America.
Yes.
Because that is the concept that most people would assume is being pushed, but that's not exactly
right. And this, this is where it becomes a very hazy sort of definition. And so what I thought we'd do is, I've got a TEDx here from a couple of years ago, and this I think was at the height thereabouts of the aftermath, or maybe in the pinnacle of the George Floyd racial reckoning. And our speaker is going to speak in favor of reparations. And so what I thought we'd do is we'd listen to this, and Satsu and I would have our input as she makes her argument. I have no idea what her argument is exactly. I'm assuming, and of course, what happens when you assume, it falls in line with some previous arguments I've heard about reparations. But we listen to her argument, critique it as we go, which obviously, if we have any exceptions whatsoever to it, it makes us inherently horrible people. And then after that, I'm going to read an opening statement made at a congressional hearing on reparations. An opening statement made by a guy named Coleman Hughes. Now, some of you may remember Coleman Hughes as the subject of a TEDx special I did several months ago, where he did a TEDx talking in favor of colorblindness. And there was a whole behind-the-scenes controversy with the people at TEDx not particularly appreciating his brand of common sense and trying to suppress his talk, amongst other things. But he's a brilliant speaker and writer, and I really appreciate him. So I thought we'd counterpoint or see what might align with what Satsu and I have to say with him as a closing to the broadcast. So ahead of that, I'm assuming that Satsu and I's thoughts on reparations will come out as we listen to this lady. No TEDx. Oh, sorry, no TEDx. No bingo card today, guys. We're just going to be taking a look at this flat as a presentation. If you want to do a mental bingo card, or if you'd like to pull out one of the old bingo cards yourself to follow along, and if you happen to have a bingo claim, by all means, you can play that game. You can play with yourself, as it were. And just for a note, for people that have said in the chat about Lords of the Night, I have invited Ranting Monkey to the stream. I'm assuming he's sleeping. Hope he is, or getting some rest, because he was up late last night doing a stream on Nick Rekieta. You can always check out Ranting Monkey's channel for that. And with that, Satsu, are you ready to take on another TED Excellence?
Yeah.
I can tell you're excited. All right, everybody, here we go.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, I know. I did try to clean up the sound a little bit. It's a little echoey, but it is coherent. So let's proceed.
I was inspired by an awesome revelation when I was young.
She was inspired by an awesome revelation when she was young. And just so you guys know, just as a matter of course, I have to pause occasionally for YouTube. I've already gotten my last partnered YouTube stream with Tom Connors.
Leah.
Got dinged for, well, not like I got a copyright strike, but it just, I couldn't monetize it. Not that I monetize these things anyway. Did I hear an Aaliyah?
Yeah, she just broke out of her room.
Uh-oh. Well, if you need to go chasing after the escapee, just let me know. I can pause.
What's up, baby? What you doing? Can you say hi, Scribe?
Hi, Skirt.
Hello, Aaliyah.
I'll see you later.
Oh,
Bye-bye.
what a cutie. All right. So she was doing what now?
And it propelled nearly everything I did in life.
Okay.
Why I adopted an African name. Why I kept my hair natural. Why I marched and rallied. Why I became a lawyer fighting for justice. So,
Oh, she's a lawyer fighting for justice. So she adopted an African name. That's cultural appropriation. Sure.
Definitely. That is literally the purest form of cultural appropriation there is. But okay.
Yeah. Keeping her hair natural, whatever, becoming
It's
a
her
lawyer,
hair.
whatever. Yeah, exactly. It's her hair. It's okay.
what is my story?
I don't know.
Tight hip hugger, bell-bottom blue jeans, platform stacked heels, shoes carrying African gay lace wrapped around my head. I had the whole look, y'all.
You didn't tell me this was a stage play. I thought we were watching a...
I didn't know what this was. I thought it was going to be... I don't know what... Okay, you know... you'd think I'd know by now. Never to take TEDx at face value, but holy cats. All right. This was the most recent explicitly titled reparations presentation I could find on TEDx. So my fingers are crossed that we get to something, shall I say, I don't know, substantive? I can't help myself sometimes.
16-year-old high school teenage rebellious me.
Uh-huh. Nope. Okay, power fist up.
I remember those days like they were yesterday.
Uh-huh.
Racing to catch the bus down Georgia Avenue, past Howard University to the office of the Black Panther Party.
Oh, wow. Okay. The Black Panther Party. I know they're still around. Do they do much of anything anymore?
As far as I know, their activity is pretty limited.
Yeah. Certainly not to the degree or the hype that it was back in like the 60s and 70s, but okay.
I was not a Panther. I was just a curious young naive girl who relished sitting on the lap of that fine brother in the front office who was supposed to be pulling security.
Okay.
Hold
How
on.
old were you again?
Yeah. Wait, I was just about to say, how old were you again?
I think she said she was 17, I think.
16, I think she said.
16? Okay, so I went down to the Black Panther Party office so I could sit on a guy's lap. Okay.
Every Saturday, I excitedly met the brothers and sisters downtown in front of the Soul Shack record store to help sell the organization's newspaper.
Oh, the Black Panthers newspaper? Okay, or I think. I don't know. Frosted Glass, thank you so much. Glad the Chiquita banana mascot has hobbies. Oh. Let's see. I have something for that. Of course, I wish I had like a different panel setup where I had like my soundboard more easily accessible from the chat. Yeah, I think the CEO of StreamYard changed. I actually had a Zoom call with that guy one time. Did I ever tell you that story?
Mm-mm.
So they were looking for input on StreamYard and the interface and everything. And for some reason, I don't know if it was everybody, but for some reason I got an invite to have a Zoom chat. Or I guess it wasn't a Zoom chat. We use StreamYard, but either way, it's the same difference. And I click on the link at the time that I'm supposed to do it, and up pops on the screen. Apparently, I guess everybody at the office was taking one of these, but I ended up with the CEO of StreamYard at the time. And he's like, hey, and I'm like, hey, why? I'm curious why I was selected. He says, oh, our metrics show you're a power user. I was like, oh, I guess since I do this like every other day or with Lords of the Night or whatever back then, I was like, I guess I would be. And like, so yeah, so what do you think of this, that, and the other? And do you have any suggestions for that? And I was like, yeah. And that was a very bizarre conversation. I've never talked to the CEO of, I think, anything before, save for Satsu in his own company. But at the time, he said, oh, anything that we don't have that we should add? And I said, yeah, is there a way to add background music? I was like, oh, we can look into that. So I think it's my fault that background music is part of StreamYard now. I'm pretty sure.
I mean,
I'm
that's
take
perfectly
credit for it.
reasonable.
Yeah,
Well,
except that background music doesn't work for me because whenever I play it, my audio starts sounding like it's coming out of a fish tank, but it's there. And I guess some people can make it work. I just can't for some reason.
yeah, interestingly enough, I told you I was playing that game Supermarket Simulator recently, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, apparently, I'm one of the few channels that covers all the mods. I have a direct line of communication with like 10 of the mods who make mods for that game.
Oh, nice.
And like they basically take my video whenever I showcase their videos, they take my videos and post them on their mod pages or whatever.
Ooh.
And it's so weird because like every time I make a suggestion or I'm talking to them about the mod or they're asking me about bugs and stuff, I'm just like, yeah, you could add or change this, and then I see the changes and I'm just like, I did that.
Yeah, that was one of the it reminds me of like one of the first times in a job where like my first real job out of college, I was just doing collections for like a what do you want to call it? A timeshare company, I guess you could call it.
No.
And I was just one little cog in the machine, right? And then when I got my current job, one of the earliest things that happened was I was tasked with a project where I had to map out a system that had to be integrated into our product and all this other stuff. And then like within 3 weeks, I saw my work and my ideas that hadn't been, I had been told how to do this. I just kind of came up with this, that, and the other to solve the problem. Ended up in the product that was being sold to customers. And I was like, that was the first time I ever felt like, wow, I'm making a difference in something rather than just being an invisible little wheel in the machine. That's
Nice.
always a nice feeling. But anyway, you went to the Black Panther record store and sold their whatever now?
Newspapers.
One sizzling hot day, I took a break, wiped my brow, sat down on the curb, flipped open the paper. My eyes fixated on the 10-point program. What we want, what we believe.
What we want, what we believe, 10-point program.
What? Who wants and who believe? The Black Panthers? Or?
I'm assuming it's the Black Panthers because she's talking about open up I think she's talking about the paper that she was selling or something.
Yeah, but contextually, because that's one of the biggest points of contention for me with a lot of these groups is there is two parallel opinions that are both running at the same time on the same road at the same speed, and I don't understand how it's possible. Which is we are not a monolith. And we do not all think the same, and you should, treat us differently based on our personal experiences. But also, we are a monolith, and we all think the same, and you should automatically assume that we've all had the same experiences. And I'm just like, so it's always safe to assume that these groups, when they say we, they mean the collective,
right?
Until it's inconvenient, and then they don't mean the collective until they do again. So.
Right. Or anybody that would refer to them as a collective, they then argue against and say, we're individuals or something, like you've done something wrong by effectively going along with their narrative rhetorically or otherwise. Also, I just want to note, and not that I blame her for it, it's fine. She's got notes written on her hand, little reminders, that's fine. Instead of holding note cards, I guess it's more convenient. The only issue is that if you're nervous up there under hot lights or something, your palms get sweaty, that stuff can become a problem real quick. Or you get it on your clothes or something. But anyway. Okay, so you saw the 10 points, what we want, what we need.
I just could not get the wording of point number 3 out of my head.
All right, well, what was behind door number 3?
We believe that this racist government has robbed us, and now we are demanding the overdue debt of 40 acres and 2 mules promised 100 years ago as restitution for slave labor and mass murder of Black people.
Okay, there you go. It's the 40 acres and 2 mules argument, or with interest.
I feel like the demand for reparations could be taken a little more seriously if they added to that demand list the people who sold them in the first place.
How do you mean?
Well, as you know, a good majority of the slaves that were brought over to America were not captured and stolen, they were sold. So I feel like if anybody is also responsible for paying back the people whose lives were affected by that, it would be the people who sold them too, right?
No, that's irrelevant.
Okay.
Yeah, no, don't No, nothing of this argument goes beyond the borders of the continental United States. It just doesn't.
Okay. Well,
It
thank you
stops.
for clearing that up.
Yeah. Responsibility or culpability for all of this is wholly an American thing.
Gotcha.
Okay.
We will accept the payment in currency, which will be distributed to our many communities. Wow! It sounded magical!
It does, doesn't it? It's almost like it would require that to make it actually happen or sense, wouldn't it?
There's a reason it sounds magical.
Yeah.
A magic way more powerful than Shazam or Abracadabra or Open Sesame. A magic, which gave my rebelliousness definition.
At 16 or 17, sitting on guys' laps.
It was the concept of reparations. Reparations, to finally find an idea, one I had unknowingly been searching for. It imbued me with a new awareness.
You had unknowingly been searching for. So you had no idea of this concept until you were 16 or 17 or whatever, reading it out of a politically, ideologically motivated racial group. And now it's like, that's a great idea. I didn't know I was looking for that this whole time.
Well, I don't know. They can't even. Well, the problem is, in her obliviousness, it was a thing that was hard to conceptualize because if you think about the logistics behind it, it's nearly impossible to conceptualize, which is a point that we'll bring up later because that's actually really important to the way that these groups tend to perform their activism. Not being able to conceptualize it is a key component, but we'll get to that later.
Granted that she gets into that herself, she might just avoid the question. I guess we'll find out.
Right. But I think it's interesting that even if you do know, like once you have found out, like, oh, there's this concept called reparations that we can utilize to do whatever, like it's still nebulous at that point. Like it's still something you can't really put together because there's so many factors, so many questions, so many stipulations to put into place to understand how it works. But that is by design. And like I said, we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
I was captivated. I was excited. And I talked about reparations whenever and wherever I could. Amongst outsiders, I was ridiculed. Too militant. Amongst non-believers, I was ostracized. Too controversial, but I was not deterred.
Oh, wow. I am having a hard time taking her seriously with this overacting, if that's a good word for it.
I would call it underacting, but sure. Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay.
Let's go with
Sitting on the curb that day, I did not know about the massacres of Black people and destruction of Black settlements in Rosewood, Florida, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Elaine, Arkansas.
Okay, so you heard about reparations. You had no idea of the history behind the justification for it by those who are for it, but you already knew you wanted it anyway. Okay. I mean, sure.
I don't know. Well, the one thing I want to specify, like the idea of getting some type of repayment for a wrongdoing that you think that you have gotten, like obviously there's nothing inherently wrong with the idea in itself.
No.
Especially if you have like, there's a history of this stuff. Like you look at history, you see there have been obvious things that have taken place that is just like, this is fucked up. Somebody needs to do something about it. But I feel like we're a couple hundred years late.
That's the issue that, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more as we go, but a guy who gets out of prison having been wrongfully convicted and getting repayment from the state for the crime done upon them.
Right.
That's a pretty direct one-to-one. You did wrong to me and I am owed something for the wrong done to me.
Right.
But when you start talking about hundreds of years removed and now, again, we're going to probably get into the logistical question of it later, trying to find a rational or reasonable way to make that make sense, especially when everyone who this was happening to and everyone who perpetrated it is now long dead
Mm-hmm.
That's a tougher sell, but we'll see what she has to say to that. If she, again, I'm at this point, I'm curious to see whether she addresses any of the obvious complications with the idea.
Wilmington, North Carolina.
Yeah.
I was ignorant of the brutal gynecological experiments on enslaved women devoid of anesthesia.
What? Okay, you are doing yourself no favors in the hyperbolic presentation. You really aren't. It feels more like parody than it seems like a presentation.
It does seem like if you were to show me clips from this with no context and tell me this was from SNL, I'd be like, okay, I believe that.
Which led to modern medicine.
That led to modern medicine. A lot of other things led to modern medicine, not just anyway.
I had no clue about the enormous profits made by corporations, insurance companies, the banking and investment industries, and academic and religious institutions from enslavement.
And of course, these things only affected one racial demographic throughout history. But okay, but you had no idea any of this was happening, and yet somehow reparations and the lack of context sounded great. Okay.
Or that this uncompensated labor not only helped to prop up these entities, but also the federal government as well as states and municipalities. But on a psychic level.
Wait. On a what level? Sorry, what was that? On a psychic level?
She said on a psychic level.
Oh, so even though you had no knowledge of this, there was like what generational memory, or genetic memory or something that just told you, this makes sense now.
I don't know, man.
Okay, on a psychic level,
I could feel within my bones and see within my communities the trauma from the enslavement era down through the years.
Okay. You got any ideas on the lottery numbers for next week?
The ever-present cultural assault on our pride, dignity, and self-esteem. The continuing negative impact on jobs and income. The inequalities in education, disparities in health, and the unfairness in the justice system.
Okay, and there's always a grain of truth amongst such things, but I always have to ask, and I've said this any number of times before, does a disparity inherently indicate an inequity? Now, the difference between two columns on a chart, the space in between, is there only one word, ism, ist, whatever else that explains the difference between these two things?
No.
It's rarely the case, if at all.
The answer is no, but not for the reason you think.
Yeah.
Because obviously you have to think about it by answering the question with the question. Does the results of that equate to something that benefits the argument that I'm making at this exact moment?
Oh, yeah.
Because if the answer is yes, then yes, obviously. But if it's no, then no.
Well, yeah, I call it the God of the Gaps theory of statistical analysis, because if you put out into the ether of an audience, you say, look at this number versus that number, we have a lot of work to do, and then you just move on, you've already given the audience the answer that they need to explain that, and you don't have to go any further because obviously it's self-evident what the problem is, and you don't have to think beyond that.
Well, yeah, and that's the beauty of slacktivism. And that's why it works so well. It's because I've done the legwork for you. You don't have to think about it. Look, I have all the information you need right here. And this is the only conclusion to come to. Just like 2 + 2 = 4. Like this is it. That's it. I've already given you the context and the answer you need. Right. You just need to understand the problem.
And the line between, or at least rhetorically, the line between actual oppression, victimization by a greater force or something, and personal responsibility is always blurred in these kind of conversations. It's like, yeah, could you be under the thumb of forces that you can't control? Of course, that's just life in general. Could you be more so than others based on your demographic, your social group, your religious group, and so on? Certainly, depending on the culture and otherwise. But unless there is an explicit declaration, like people who lived in slavery and under Jim Crow, it was pretty obvious. You know, there was a distinct line there. It's like, okay, there's several layers to society, and you belong on this one, and other people belong on this one, and that is what the law says, and that's how people treat you.
Right.
And so there was a time where that was explicit, literally explicit. Now it's not. Does that mean that divisions don't exist? No. Does that mean everybody's nice? No. But you have to go a longer way, and you have to provide more information than in the past to show that as being actually the case, because the barriers, the actual barriers, have been dropped. And I always love how people say, you know, nobody cares about the lives of this demographic or that demographic, whatever else. And yet any time where an injustice, either real or in the initial stages assumed, occurs, you never hear the end of it.
Oh, yeah.
And people don't take it lightly, if they ever did.
Well, you know, but you don't have to pay attention to that stuff.
1 second here. Got that. And let me bring this up before it disappears off the list. Thank you, John Miller. With all this overacting, I'm waiting for the you can help by donating 10 cents a day. Okay, she's not Sally Struthers, but with psychic abilities and that outfit, she might be Miss Cleo.
Yeah.
So you never know.
Well, to comment, Frosted Glass made a good. He said, if you believe that enacting reparations would actually be enough to satisfy people like this, I've got a bridge to sell you. That's an interesting point to bring up, though, because when you say that, a lot of people push back and they say, well, how do you know? Like, how do you know that this wouldn't satisfy them? Like, because tangibly, every legal precedent that could have been set to end racism, or not racism, but to end slavery and the systems that kind of put into place, they've been done. Like, that's the whole origin of Juneteenth. Like, you have basically, and pretty much across the board, the same rights as literally everyone else. Like, all the things that could have been done outside of just giving them money and telling them to shut up have been done, and people still maintain to this day that they're still in chains. So if everything on a legal side could be done, and now you are literally not only like equivalent to every other citizen in the US, but pedestalized now, like you're like, people basically worship you as a demographic, and that's not even enough. So why would we believe that them tossing you some money and saying, all right, well, shut the fuck up now? Like, why would anyone believe that would appease you? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it would be, the only thing I think of would be an ongoing stipend for particular bloodlines in this country. Would be the only thing that, it wouldn't even appease anybody, but it would at least keep everything. I don't even know if that would work, but I'm trying to imagine, like, what would you have to do under the current sort of thinking if you were to implement reparations? Well, we'll probably get into that. Hold on, I'm getting ahead of myself. She hasn't even gotten to that yet. She needs to get to the point where she describes how it's going to work, and that's really my question for this talk: is she going to get to the nitty gritty of what her proposal, or what the proposal that she's sort of adopted would be to make this happen?
Reparations.
Yes.
Reparations.
Yeah, you keep saying it.
Yes. The issue is hot. It's scalding. It's on fire. And at one time, unthinkable by mainstream society.
It's still unthinkable now.
If it wasn't unthinkable, it might have actually been attempted to happen at this point. But somehow we keep hitting some kind of roadblock. You're going to talk to us about those?
Viable public policy. Yeah. It poses only a question: does the United States government, as well as other culpable entities, owe reparations to the descendants of those
other culpable entities?
Probably like companies, or institutions that took advantage of slave labor to build their universities or factories or things like that.
Not the place that sold them, though.
Well, no. Okay, I don't know what you're talking about, but here's the thing: there have been, and this talk might be old enough that those things hadn't happened yet, but there have been several both cities and other jurisdictions that have, and I don't remember the specifics right now, have attempted a kind of reparations here and there, or giving money or facilities or something to specific demographics within their jurisdictions.
Well, wasn't that
lately.
isn't that like the basis of a lot of the native places where it's just like that is their land, you know what I mean? And
Oh, like reservations?
yeah, like places don't have to. Was that a
Well, yeah,
product
there's
of
that. There's that, but
reparations?
there's also been like active reparations for Black Americans in some cities, and I don't recall. I should have looked this up, Ed. I don't recall exactly what they were, but there were like issuances of checks or something in some towns or whatever, in an attempt to redeem themselves or something. And these are very isolated incidents on a sort of I think like citywide or ordinance level. I should have looked that up beforehand, but anyway, I'm sure somebody in the chat, very industrious and helpful, might look up such examples that I can bring up later. I'm just, won't someone rid me of this meddlesome priest? I'm not saying anybody should do it. But if somebody decided to do that in the course of things and put a link up on the chat or something to save me the time, I appreciate it. That's all,
Just as questioned the late Congressman John Conyers' reviews, we ask questions about everything. What's in space? What's underneath the water? Interesting questions, he would say to me. Like this one.
John Conyers said this to you? I think she said John Conyers. Really? I mean, maybe she knows John Conyers. I don't know.
This one has been studiously avoided.
It has not been studiously avoided.
No.
There have been congressional hearings on it. It's been talked about for decades.
You're literally on TEDx talking about it right now.
Exactly.
The answer may be because few questions challenge society to consider over 400 years of history all at once.
No, the main question is logistics and feasibility. So the history is not being denied. The legitimacy and the fairness and the implementation and so on and so forth, that's the big question. How exactly do you account for this after 400 years and involving people that were never under slavery?
It's so interesting, too, that they say whenever we pose this question to people, they look at us crazy and they look at it like it's this huge problem that they can't seem to address or figure out how to navigate. And I'm like, you can't address it and figure out how to navigate it. If you've ever seen anybody speak on reparations and at the end of the conversation, the definitive question finally gets posed. Okay, so what? What's the plan? How do we enact this? Then they're like, oh, well, that's what I'm willing to discuss. Like, we're here to talk, but we're here to figure it out. I'm like, how don't you have this figured out?
Right. Like there hasn't been enough time to consider the possibilities or to have a plan or at least a sketch or something. Real quick, Tandemar brings up another obviously good example. Japanese Americans who were wrongly treated during World War II received reparations, but it was given to the people who were directly affected at the time. Right. Just like with the prisoner that's been put away unjustly for years, they get some kind of monetary compensation or otherwise from the state. The Japanese internment camps, those who were actually interned, the individuals, their children, and so on, received reparations and recognition of that wrongdoing. Long overdue, truth be told, but at least it was something. And it wasn't like it was completely swept under the rug. But even before that, people knew it was wrong. But getting official recognition, a long time in coming, but it finally did happen. But again, the people who were directly affected by the wrongdoing received as best an apology as could be provided after the fact.
Right. And to your example, in that situation, the man who went to jail for a long time or whatever and was wrongly convicted or whatever, it wasn't just him that was affected. His family and everybody around him was affected. But guess what? They don't get the reparations. He does. Like, that's not how that works, because the idea of reparations now is you need to give money to everybody who was either affected directly or indirectly Everybody deserves money as long as they can put their hand up and say that this affected me in some type of way. But it's like it hasn't. Like you haven't been affected by this
Yeah.
at all.
And so they have to reach back to these abstract ideas of like, oh, the situation I'm in now is a cumulative, direct historical result of those wrongdoings done 400 years ago. I'd be in a much better place personally if it wasn't for some people who were horribly mistreated that I've never met and have no connection to, except maybe through the chains of DNA. And so I get to blame my situation and the circumstances of my life on the government from back then that I need to be paid for now.
Yeah.
It's
like, what do you do?
Yeah.
What do you do in a situation where your Black ancestors were slave owners who owned Black and Italian slaves?
No. What are you talking about? You keep bringing this stuff up. You need to stop. Okay. We're here to talk seriously about reparation, not bring up irrelevancies or just like fantasies. Okay, Satsu, come on, stick to it.
I don't appreciate you gaslighting me, sir.
I don't know what to do now. Am I a bad person? Oh God.
To turn within our souls and discover what we truly believe about race, equity, and the value to be placed on human suffering.
Apparently 40 acres and 2 mules. That's the value you said is owed plus or whatever the current market value is.
Yeah, what's the inflation to?
I mean, prime real estate plus, what is effectively sort of like labor machines from like 1856 or whatever, compounded annually. It's probably quite a bit, and I'm sure someone has done the math on that at this point. Which again, come on, lady, let's get to the logistics. Let's get to the details.
Think about what, if anything, it's owed to the descendants of those who were kidnapped, sold, raped, castrated, stripped for humanity, language, and culture.
Oh, the descendants.
She mentioned sold.
Oh, that's true. I mean, and as we know, only white Europeans and Americans sold slaves.
Well, I mean, that's probably what she believes, but
yeah, and only white Europeans dealt in slavery in general, sold or otherwise. And Native Americans never took members of other tribes and turned them into slaves. Obviously, people of the African nations never, captured and then sold their own countrymen or otherwise, or rival tribes to white European. None of this. I mean, the whole term slave doesn't refer back to Slavic people who, aesthetically are white. No, none of that is true. None of that happened. It's only one direction, two races, and it's only within the boundaries of the continental United States.
Boy.
Indeed. Why shouldn't the great-great-grandchildren of those who, after emancipation, were denied land, leased by prisons as convict laborers, subjected to Jim Crow segregation laws?
You mean the ones that you guys are resurrecting?
Forcibly sterilized, relegated to substandard housing, worsened by the denial of credit known as redlining.
Okay, so all that history that you had absolutely no idea about, all that suffering of people you've never met, had no connection to, no knowledge of, their suffering becomes your boon? Seems a little sadistic, doesn't it? And like Satsu said, the person in jail gets the reparations, not the immediate family members or descendants thereof, unless there's some kind of like a state thing or something,
The worst part about it is like, really, genuinely, like there could be a way, if there was a big enough concerted effort of people coming together and trying to work this thing out, they could come up with some type of figure. Like it could be done if there was actually any interest in doing so, which once again, that's another one of those key factors. Don't be fooled into thinking that reparations is an actual tangible reward for them. Like it's not. This is literally a paper carrot that they're holding in front of fucking imaginary horses that they're trying to get the chase for votes, money, and all kinds of other shit. Like, trust me, nobody, like, anti-racists don't want the end of racism. You know,
their bread and butter would go away.
Yeah, like anybody who you feel like, and I'm not saying this for everybody. There's a bunch of naive people who truly believe in the cause that think that there's an end game, but there's not. The people who are pulling the strings, like, there's never been, and that's why this stuff is so fucking hard to conceptualize and come up with, because they don't want to. It would be a complete detriment to their cause and everything that they're doing for this thing to actually go away.
Frosted Glass, thank you again. Right now, Lincoln's ghost is having second thoughts. Lincoln is a much more controversial subject. But thank you, Frosted Glass. Now, I did a video not too long ago where the speaker was saying something to the effect of, I want to see a day where we don't have to talk about race. And I'm like, great, then stop talking about it. He was a guy promoting, like, you know, racial divisions and other things. And I was like, well, great, the first step is to make it irrelevant. The first step is to make it as relevant to an assessment of someone as their eye color or their hair color, which is to say not at all. But somehow you have to keep talking about it. You have to keep saying it means something, or it's an identity, and on and on and on. Like, you're never going to get past it until you get past it. And the people that are promoting this, whatever their color, there are plenty of white people that promote this same kind of division, that want to thrive off of this, make a buck off of it, and get their books sold over the controversy or otherwise, from Robin DiAngelo to Ibram X. Kendi.
It's also a fundamental misunderstanding of the point of that, the type of activism that they think they're engaging in. Like, it was always, which is why, like, if you ask, like, great grandparents now, like any of them that are still left over, or even maybe a generation before them, how they felt or what it felt like to finally have that Juneteenth moment, to have stuff written into law or whatever. The idea of, we did it, like, we accomplished it, we can stop now. You know what I mean? Like, even though that wasn't necessarily the case, it was just like, we had a goal and we accomplished it. Like, that's what you're shooting for, to achieve the goal. But you'll hear activists now say, like, the fight is never over. Like, no matter how much progress we make, we'll never actually hit that point. Like, there's always more work to be done.
Well, I mean, there is an argument to be said, and I've made it before, is that the Civil Rights Act of 1964, for example, it wasn't the end of unfair treatment in this country. It was the start of changing things. It was effectively an acknowledgement and an apology for what had come before, and a promise to do better. And we are, striving to form a more perfect union over time. So that's why we have amendments. That's why new cases come up. That's why people violate the law, and those laws have to be tested and enforced. So it is an ongoing vigilance for anything, not just for racism or unequal treatment, but just in general, is that if you don't keep an eye on the people in charge, if you don't enforce the laws on the books, then they become irrelevant. And this, of course, is something that goes right into DEI and everything else, where you have all these completely unconstitutional, unfair policies being implemented and people being really victimized on a systemic level. And it's somehow equal employment laws don't seem to apply anymore. And so you just run rampant in this sort of like weird anarchy of racism and sexism and on that's being allowed because it's fashionable. And so in that sense, it does need to be monitored. The problem is that when you say that nothing has changed, when you ignore all of the advancements that have been made, and you say they effectively don't matter because they just don't. Time started in 2016. Nothing happened before that. Any examples of history or changes of the country or attitudes or otherwise they don't even exist, right? That's where you run into a problem. You have to at least acknowledge the changes from Jim Crow to today. And they always seem to skip over this vast amount of time between when Jim Crow laws were in place and the present day, and to say that somehow things haven't changed at all. And that's where you lose me. You have to at least acknowledge the progress. It might not
Yeah.
be perfect progress. It rarely is ever perfect progress, but we're not talking like things are operating today as they did back in 1956 in Selma.
Well, yeah, and some people feel like they'll say like, we're functionally it's the same as it was back then. Obviously being ignorant and not understanding, what the people had to go through back then and stuff. But and also too, like obviously, things have to keep moving and progressing. No problem is going to ever be fixed because human beings are human beings. But it's still the idea that there was some type of end game to go for. There was some type of like you have a picture painted of what the result is you want from this. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? And I feel like the picture was painted very vividly back then. I feel like people generally understood like this is what we want. And at the end of the day, the message was we want to be treated like human beings. We want to be treated like everybody else who's getting treated here. And that's at the barest of minimums. Like that's what we want, But nowadays, it genuinely seems like there is no end game. We don't have any end goal. There is no path to the finish line. There is no fixing this. There is no solving the problem. This is a problem that will persist forever. And we need an infinite solution to go along with this infinite problem because we won't ever be appeased. Like,
I mean, on the temporal plane, equality under the law is about as good as you're ever really going to get.
Yeah.
Outside of that, you're down to individual opinions or actions or everything else, which are always going to be subject to that individual's, attitudes and behavior. You're never going to cure racism. You're never going to cure hatred. You're never going to cure murder or theft. There are some fallibilities that are just inherent to the human condition. That's what laws are there to try to correct and try to condition society towards a better overall experience. But it is not a cure.
Yeah, by the way, too, if you guys ever wondered why robots always come to the conclusion that the eradication of humans is the only way to stop the problems that are persistent in humans, that's the reason why, is because the conclusion at the end of the day is what's the problem and what is the common denominator in every problem that exists amongst humans? Well, humans exist. So at the end of the day, the ultimate conclusion to solve this problem is to get rid of the humans. Like that's
every law. Okay, and here's some people I know this blows people's minds sometimes. I say every law is simply an acknowledgement of the fallibility of human beings.
Right.
A prohibition against murder is an acknowledgement that human beings murder and that we as a society in general think murder is bad, unless we're talking about war. But even then, that theft is bad, right? That sexual assault is on and on and on. These aren't cure-alls. They are not panaceas. To say that, like, I've seen several people arguing that the civil rights, white people think the Civil Rights Act cured racism. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what white people are thinking that, but whoever they are, they're idiots. Laws don't cure human behavior. They put consequences on behavior that society deems as undesirable. And that's it. A locked door only keeps out an honest man. A law in place only works as a deterrent if someone is aware of it and also has an eye towards the general morality of society. But there are consequences for those that violate it, and they're always hanging over your head like Damocles sword if you go the wrong direction. That's about it. You can only try to mitigate people's inherent instincts or the worst behaviors amongst humans. You can't stop them from happening totally.
Well, this is a little bit of a segue out of the immediate conversation, but this is something that was very interesting to me because I was talking to somebody recently about socialism, and they were talking about the idea that, like, putting everybody on an equal playing field and having everybody have access to the same things is like, that's like the ultimate best result. Like, it is what it is, and everybody will just inevitably be happy because, everybody will be equal. And the one question that came to mind that I never had thought of in the vein of this like when talking about socialism was like, well, what do you do with the people who don't want that?
Yeah.
Like, who don't want equality? What if they're unhappy with getting the same thing that everybody else is doing? Because I've never heard anybody really address that. It's like, what do you do with those people?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a great story. I forget if it was Philip K. Dick, or it might have been, God, somebody's going to correct me in the chat. But anyway, there's this great short story called Harrison Bergeron. And it's all about this world where everyone is made equal. They've had machines or attachments put on their bodies. They've had their brains dumbed down or heightened up based on mechanical things and chemical things, to where everybody physically, mentally, and otherwise functions exactly the same. And your role in society is determined for you ahead of time and all this stuff. So everybody is on the same playing field, until this one guy named Harrison Bergeron decides to say, no, I think I can do something different. I want to be different. And then he throws off all his shackles. This whole thing. And so the inherent nature of human individuality, competition, strength versus weakness and one to another, you can never have a completely level set society amongst your populace. That's the problems. That's the I mean, there is no perfect system, but trying to have a situation where everybody's given exactly the same thing and they have all the exact same resources and no one shall have more than they need, etc., that cannot persist in a society made up of creative and ambitious beings such as humans are, just by nature.
Also, unless it literally stagnates progress. Like, as far as like any progress to be made as far as society goes, completely stops at that point. Yeah. Because there's literally no incentive.
There was a Kurt Vonnegut. Yes, Frosted Glass. I kept forgetting. I always Philip could get Kurt Vonnegut. Just another aside, there was a book series I love called World War, and it was written by a guy named Harry Turtledove, and it's this alternate history series. The first 4 books are really the only ones worth reading. And it postulates in the middle of World War II, the world is attacked by aliens from other planets. But these aren't like your 50s sort of goofy sci-fi aliens in a way, but they're sort of like within the realm of realism aliens. And the difference between the aliens that invade us and the humans is that they come from a planet where there were no bodies of water and everybody was a singular society. And so when they sent their probes to Earth 400 years in the past, before they started traveling to Earth, they saw people riding around on horses with like sticks and stones and things like, this will be an easy planet to conquer. By the time they got here, we've got machine guns and planes and tanks and atomic bombs on the way and everything else. Like, what? How did this happen? Their entire concept of the evolution of technology, of society and everything else just did not compute, because they came from a world where everybody was the same. So progress was incremental and slow, and there was no competition because everybody was on the same page and everything was very, very slow. And so they couldn't comprehend how in a relatively short amount of time compared to their society, we had advanced so far to be effectively equal in threat to the invading force, save for a couple advantages that they had. And of course, once their advantages landed on Earth, human ingenuity captured some of it and reverse engineered it, and suddenly we're on equal footing within about 20 years. Right. It's a great little thought experiment storyline. So yeah, I can't recommend that highly enough. It's called World War by Harry Turtledove. Again, the first 4 books that take place in World War II, best of the series. There's stuff that happens after that's not so good. But anyway, that all being said, let's get back to the show.
Block for military benefits under the GI Bill, economically dispossessed, forced into the lowest paying jobs, bound to an inferior and false education, inundated with disparate health care and imperil to a mass incarceration unmatched in the world. Why should Black people not be compensated?
Wow, that was a litany of stuff real quick. So GI Bill, mass incarceration. Why shouldn't Black people be compensated?
Well, here's the thing. Why shouldn't those Black people be compensated? Don't have an answer for that. I feel like they absolutely should. Why should people who are living now be compensated? A bit more complicated, huh?
A little bit.
But then, think about this.
I am thinking about a lot of things right now, but go ahead.
What about white American taxpayers who never owned any slaves?
Oh,
yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
There we go.
And what about What about tax-paying black people who never were slaves?
Or tax-paying black people who benefited from their slave owner family members.
What?
Never lynched anyone.
Yeah, so completely innocent of the crimes.
Never participated in redlining. Why should they pay for the sins of forefathers and foremothers that they never even knew?
Good question. Why?
What about those whites whose ancestors survived long after the chattel enslavement period?
Sure. Like most, I mean, as far as I know, the origins of my family line mostly arrived in America after slavery had already been outlawed.
Right.
So I mean, you know, given the various branches and things, maybe somewhere, as far as I know, I never heard of it. My grandmother and my mother have done amazing genealogical research on my family tree. And best of my knowledge, and I could be mistaken, there's no particular source of slave holding whatever's in my family tree. But the direct lineage for my family in America came over after the Civil War and after the Emancipation Proclamation. So I don't have any direct connection to slavery, at least within the United States, genealogically or otherwise. Not that there's like a genealogical connection to slavery or crime. Like if that's like, I know I have a bank robber in my family history.
Mm-hmm.
Do I owe Wells Fargo, $5,000 or something because my great uncle or whatever robbed a bank?
I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, give me yes.
Give me a sec, real quick. I'm gonna go check on Aaliyah.
Okay, go. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
And while you're doing that, I'll take a look at some chat stuff. Genty Maxey, don't vote for her to run any more Dem cities. You already have a Tiffany Henyard. Oh yeah, Tiffany Henyard. That's right. Yeah. Again, this talk took place, I think, 2021 or 2022, something like that. So it's a little dated. Let's see. Tier Alexander, this spoken word sucks ass. Bring out Rebby Jackson. Let's see. Another one. Tier Alexander. I will never sing like Keeverdam, or I will never be as quick-witted as Frosted, but I am special in my own. Never use someone else's yardstick because you will never measure up. Yeah, inspiration and role models and things are good, but always try to find your own way. Like this whole TEDx thing was inspired effectively by two YouTubers, one who's still active and one who's not so active anymore, I don't think. Skeptor, who I think gave up YouTube several years ago, and Sargon of Akkad. Skeptor had a series on his channel. I don't even know if his channel is still up anymore. It might not be. But he has a very brief series he did called the TEDx Horror Show. And he effectively did, TEDx commentaries and critiques. And I found that so interesting because, as I've said before, TEDx and TED are such an eclectic platform of different ideas and proposals and arguments that you really never run out of things to think about or be challenged by. And then Sargon of Akkad did a couple of TEDx commentaries in the past, long ago, that I thought were hilarious. And so my initial attempts at TEDx stuff were immediately inspired by them. But ultimately, inspiration was just like, that's a good place to look for interesting topics. After that, got to turn into my own thing. And I'll never think that I'm as good as or as insightful as either Sargon or Skeptor were in those particular presentations. But, I did my best, as it were, both in the scripted area and now. But yeah, you got to make your own way. And, there are role models, there are inspirations and elsewise, but you got to find your own pride in what you do and do things that you love and try to make something that you would want to see or read or look at or whatever. And it'll almost never be satisfying. That's the one thing about, making something or achieving something, unless there's like a hard line of, you had to meet these very specific prerequisites and then suddenly you get this thing, whether it's like an achievement or certification or something like that, or a diploma. Some things in life, it'll always feel like you didn't quite do as good as you could, or maybe you took a shortcut or whatever. And all takes me back to that quote, a masterpiece is never completed, only abandoned. Because you always look back, like things that I wrote, and I thought were pretty good 10 years ago. I look at it like, oh, I can revise that, or that could have been better. It never feels like it's quite done, and I think it's that element of never being wholly satisfied in things that keeps us going most of the time. Not necessarily towards bad ends, but sometimes just for self-improvement. Anyway, how's the little one?
She was good. She was hungry. I gave her some snacks real quick. So
Good.
My wife gets home.
All right. And if you have to duck out for whatever reason, just give me a high sign. I don't want to keep you any longer. I didn't know what your time frame was for today.
Oh, no problem. Later on, I gotta go pay for my spot at the festival or whatever, but I don't it's not urgent. So
okay. And by the way, guys, if you missed at the beginning, there's a link to the top of the chat box for a fundraiser for Satsu to go to what is it exactly? It's a convention?
It's like a festival, a summer festival.
Festival. That's what it was. Wrong word. So yeah, take a look at that. If you can donate, please do so. And if you can't, please share that out on social media.
Indeed. What I missed?
Oh, sorry.
Did I miss anything?
No, I didn't play it at all. I didn't.
Okay.
I was just babbling about inspirations and things about stuff. Yeah, being all philosophical.
Gotcha.
Because as you know, as an English major, that also makes me a philosophy major. Yeah. Just if you didn't know, that's yeah.
Hasn't the United States government already paid reparations through affirmative action?
That was in part, yes. Because even after the Civil Rights Act was implemented, there was an acknowledgement that despite this law having been passed, obviously a lot of damage had been done by what was law previously. And so some compensation or some adjustment time was needed to try to make up for those harms. That's why affirmative action got as much, slack as it did for as long as it did, because just passing a law doesn't fix the damage that had been done.
Yeah, and so, it also, obviously was going to take some time, but the warping of the objective here, because obviously a lot of people and a lot of modern day activists will say that clearly until we see 50-50 representation in every company, every business, every field, then we'll never get to the result we're looking for. And I'm just like, well, basic math says that is a literal impossibility. So and make up certain part of the population. So that's literally impossible. And they're like, exactly. So we can keep fighting for this forever.
Yeah, the war is continuous and ever shall it be. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What type of price tag should be put on over 2 centuries of legalized inhumanity?
I don't know. What say you?
What about Oprah?
What about Oprah?
Should she get a check?
I don't know. Is Oprah the direct descendants of? I honestly don't know. I'm not being facetious. Is she within the category that would technically be qualified to receive it? Go ahead.
Well, it's interesting because it appears that she is going through the motions and actually performing a critical thinking experiment right now, which is encouraging. It's like, okay, so she's considered these things. Like, obviously she's bringing them up. So it's like this is a thing that she's thought of. But I'm like, I'm waiting for the rug to get pulled, Well,
I'm waiting for the follow through. It's like, okay, you bring up the subject of Oprah. Let's say that Oprah is a direct descendant of slaves, and maybe she is. I don't know personally, but let's say she is. Okay, but she's a multi-billionaire. Given her circumstances, does she deserve reparations? Well, I mean, philosophically speaking, yes, because the crime was still committed. She's still a descendant of people that were victimized. So why shouldn't she? Or is she saying that we should draw a line to an individual's current personal circumstances that don't reflect what they think of as a victimhood status? Is she going to follow up with that thought? That's my question here. Or she's going to bring it up and throw it out and not actually give us anything for it?
Regardless of what might think about all of these queries, one fact is...
Oh, hi, Squishy.
Scribble says hello, Squishy.
Hello.
She was asking me how much longer am I going to be streaming.
Oh, do you need to go?
No, not right now, but
Okay, well, I'll try to get to some bigger chunks of this. Sorry.
Reparations is not a fairy tale, but a well-established principle of both domestic and international law, which the United States government is aware of and has participated in.
Well, then why did you say earlier that it's something nobody talks about? You can't have it both ways.
Yes, you can. She can have it both ways.
The 16-year-old native Washingtonian me, sitting on the curb that day, had not learned in school that reparations were paid right here in the nation's capital, pursuant to the 1862 D.C. Compensated Emancipation Act, but the funds weren't paid to the newly freed Black people. The reparations went to the former white slave owners.
Okay. So?
Well, they went to the former white and the former Black slave owners.
Right. No, sorry. That doesn't, no. But okay, these things happen in the distant past. If you want to count them as injustices along with actual slavery, okay. So what does that have to do with today, like now? Citing all these crimes and misdeeds of the past, yes. So what do you propose happened today? Not back in 1862 or whatever, but today.
The 20-year-old college student history major me had not learned that the country of Haiti, which heroically won its freedom in 1803, was forced to pay reparations to France.
Now we're talking about Haiti? You don't have anything, do you?
All the way up through 1947, long after both the original enslaved and enslavers were dead. I did not know that the British government paid reparations when it abolished slavery in 1833, not to the formerly enslaved, but again to the former slave owners, and the reparation payments to those white descendants of slave owning families continue all the way down through the year 2015.
If you say so. By the way, who ended slavery in Britain? Was it white people by any chance? Yeah, you look at the story of William Wilberforce in working towards eradicating slavery in Britain back in the day. It's quite the story. That guy.
Look up the history of the form of the Republican Party.
No. Can't talk about that. Can't talk about what certain organizations developed out of the Democratic Party back in the day. No, can't talk about that either.
And the elder me was flabbergasted upon learning.
Wow.
That in 1892,
Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Oh, wait, no, that's a different thing.
The descendants of 11 Italian lynching victims in New Orleans received cash reparations from the United States government.
Okay, so do you hate Italians now or something? Okay. What do you propose happen today that attempts, ill-conceived or otherwise, at reparations have occurred in the past? That's beside the point, because you're still looking for reparations today. 16-year-old you was sitting on the curb or some guy's lap reading a newspaper about reparations in the modern day. So what? Get to it. Come on, you got like 6 minutes left. Why? I don't know. Why?
Oh, wait, hold on. I said out loud, and I don't know if you saw it, that monkey was in the chat. Did you see? Oh. Did you hear me say that earlier?
No.
I thought you heard me, and I saw it in the chat. So I was just like, yeah, he was. Oh. I don't know if he still is, but he was in the chat earlier.
I know. I totally missed it. I'm sorry. A monkey, if you're still listening, hello. Hope you're feeling okay. Hope you're
I just thought about it because I said it like matter-of-factly. Like,
yeah, no, I.
By the way.
Either I didn't hear it or it got overwritten by me mumbling or something. I can't say.
Gotcha. Okay. But, I just thought about it.
Yeah, I sent him the link before the show started, but I figured it was a long shot whether he'd have the opportunity to come on. So, but hey, monkey, if you're out there, sorry for missing you. I got to switch between the tab that has the video and the tab that has all the StreamYard chat things going. So, all right, Monkey stormed off because you ignore. I could believe it. I could believe it. I mean, I've stormed out of his chat too when he ignores me. So,
Not respected and treated as others.
Probably back up a little bit, just a smidge, just to make sure I didn't miss something.
Why?
Why?
Why are Black people not respected and treated as others?
Why are Black people not respected and treated as others? Do you mean in 1862 or now?
Why? Why are atrocities committed against Japanese Americans and Native peoples addressed to an extent, but not those of African Americans?
Again, it's more of the direct result of the events of the time. And
well, okay. Well, let's just say this. It's not like it's wrong for her to be upset at the idea that back when reparations was being talked about, as opposed to being given to the people who were directly affected and the people who were slaves, they didn't get repaid, but the slave owners were being repaid for losing their what effectively was farm equipment.
That's legit.
Yeah. So it's like, obviously be fucking upset about that shit. And the idea that some people do espouse the fact that, oh, well, reparations was paid back in the day, and that's what they're referring to, is fucking ridiculous, obviously.
Sure.
But once again, the fuck does that have to do with today? Yeah,
that's the problem. I mean, to say that it was an injustice is easy, because it was. To say that it was an injustice to every freed slave that they were not given some compensation for the crimes committed upon them over the course of their lifetimes is a reasonable thing to say. But again, everyone, both the criminal and the victims in those situations, whether they received reasonable reparations or not, are all now long dead, and has been generation upon generation upon generation since that occurred, in a way that you could say, oh, a direct crime has been committed. So again, we're still waiting. What is your proposal for today?
Also, Monkey says, I'm here. Sorry, I was just up until 5 and slept soundly.
Oh, well, I'm glad you slept soundly. I was assuming you'd be resting, so I hope you're feeling all right. And thank you for popping in, saying hello. And everybody, if you don't already know about Ranting Monkey, go check out his channel. He talked about Nick Rekieta last night, the ongoing train wreck that is Nick Rekieta. But anyway, also another reminder at the top of the chat box, a fundraiser for Satsu setting up his business to go to a festival and try to show his wares and gain more clients. So take a look at that. And if you can donate, please do so. If you can't, please share that out on social media.
How can an administration righteously seek justice for immigrant children separated from their families at the border while historically ignoring the snatching of Black babies from mother's breast?
Well, okay, here's the cynical answer to that question, because whatever you think about the immigration policy, it's happening now, not 400 years ago.
Yeah, and also... those people aren't just coming over and getting stuff or whatever for kicks. Like, these are voters being literally imported into the country for a specific reason.
Yeah, but we don't want to talk about that part of it.
I don't know, man. I was telling Squishy the other day, man, like, look, I'm a Black man in America, and some people can say that that's just like really fucked up, but if I had any designation, if I got a second chance to pick one, it would be a legal immigrant right now, because these motherfuckers, they get everything. Like I was actually looking, like, free healthcare, free housing, like the whole nine, like the whole situation is just like, here's an entire package to live comfortably here for literally no reason. I'm just like, bro, can I get that?
Yeah. Immigration laws are the best laws to break right now.
Oh shit, dude. But anyway, that's a whole nother situation.
How can an anti-Asian hate crimes bill sail through Congress while anti-lynching legislation struggled for over a century up until just last week?
Because nobody's being lynched.
Yeah, and lynching was already illegal. It was just like you get these like, did you know murder was illegal? Did you know that? I mean, good God. Okay. Anyway.
Oh my God.
Yeah, anti-Asian hate crimes bill. That alone is like, okay, if I assault somebody, I've assaulted somebody. The color of their skin.
Well, think about it. It was a cause and
Anyway.
effect situation. There was
Yes.
a unusual amount of hate going towards Asians at the particular time because of particular reasons. So the government said, all right, let's do something about this. How many lynchings have been taking place? Like, how many? Is it like this thing that's been running rampant and it's on the rise all of a sudden? And like, no, it's not a thing. It's literally already illegal. So why?
Oh, but you're denying the historical experience, Satsu. I mean, the fact that it happened at one time means we still have to pretend like it's happening right now. Again, this is the core of all these arguments I hear, is that the past is not the past, and that villainy exists in the hearts of people that have never done anything wrong. It's just, ugh.
To finally see the light of day.
Oh, shush. Come on.
We must be straightforward.
Oh, really? Well, you've spent 10 minutes not being. Can you get to it, please?
Oh, man. Please
we must stop the false narrative that because slavery ended over a century ago, that nothing is due.
Okay, so what is the correct narrative? What's the correct plan?
There is no statute of limitations on addressing human rights violations, and deaths are neither absolved nor diminished by the passage of time. In fact, as anyone with a credit card painfully knows, over time, debts grow larger.
Yeah, but what happens when the person who owes the debt dies?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, like, it seems like critical thinking, like the part of their brain that allows critical thinking only works under certain conditions. Because, like, if you're going to use that analogy, then you had to have known, like, when you die, where does that debt go? Like, if the person responsible dies, where does it go?
Yeah. And if it's not something that's like somehow passed on to a family member or something, it disappears. And especially when you're talking about generations upon generations over hundreds of years. Some guy in my history who owed the bank $20, I don't owe the bank $20 plus interest now.
Yeah, like that's not how that works. It's just like the fucking shit with the PPP loans, where people was like, oh, fucking, if you get your student loans refunded or whatever, like, you're being irresponsible and not taking care of your responsibilities. And they're like, well, what about you? You took the PPP loan. It's like, you mean the forgivable loan that was literally designed to be forgiven? Like that was the point it was made. It wasn't like something you committed to that you definitely said you were going to pay back after you signed paperwork explicitly saying you were going to do so. I'm like, these are two completely different things. And they're like, but they both have a loan in it. And I'm like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Idiot.
Well, that was the misnomer, putting the word loan on the PPP things. It should have been called grants and not loans in the first place. But yeah, if you sign up for a loan, you were agreeing to repay the money that you were being given. But anyway, that's we're making her argument for it. Come on. No.
We all stand on the shoulders of those who came before us.
It all depends on what we're talking about.
Each generation passes its debts as well as its assets on to the next generation.
Horse hockey.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
Horse hockey. You know, I mean, I if you want to talk about standing on the shoulders of, I can credit my immediate ancestors with some of the advantages that I ended up with, like the hard work of my mother and my father, built upon the hard work and sacrifice of their mothers and fathers. Each generation of my family, in one way, shape, or form, has ultimately ended up in a better place than the one before it. That's about as good as you can say. And all of their work did not prevent them from tragedy. It did not prevent them from downturns. It did not prevent them from bad luck. It was their good decisions and hard work that brought them to where they were. Now, by the time I and my sister arrived, we could decide to fuck it all up and throw it all away and become, heroin junkies or something. Only on the basis of our individual decisions, generation after generation, is there any chance that the ones coming after are going to have a good or better outcome.
Yeah, and tell that to the fucking children of billionaires and multimillionaires who are like, yeah, my kids ain't getting shit. Like,
right. Yeah, because they have thank goodness they have some awareness of what that kind of, financial freedom without struggle or having to make choices or anything else can do to somebody. But anyway, you were saying
the heritage which whites in this country enjoy is what has been called white skin privilege, benefiting from a society, a state, a social structure which is governed by white supremacy. And although we may debate the who, what, when, and how of remedy,
we may debate, but we're not going to, are we?
there is no question that Caucasians in this country, no matter when they arrive, no matter their guilt or innocence, enjoy the fruits of over 400 years of unjust enrichment.
Okay,
really?
So we're all guilty, regardless of whether or not we have a direct, lineal, otherwise connection to the crimes of slavery. If you're white in this country, you are guilty of having benefited from it, no matter what. No one else of any other demographic falls under that same situation. You certainly, in no way, shape, or form, fall under that same situation. But if you are a particular skin color, regardless of your heritage or your history, you are responsible. I think there's a word for that.
It's so funny, man, because once again, like I said, the responsibility of the people and the people who look like you and what you do is something they seem to hold on to so much. But ask them about the shit that's going on in their neighborhoods. Ask them about the kids that are getting shot in drive-bys and shit. Ask them about every time the police come around and ask what's going on in the situation, them telling them that they don't know anything. They don't have any information. Ask them about their kids who are stealing from Targets and Walmarts and shit right now and getting them shut down in their neighborhoods and losing them access to all the stuff that they supposedly need to survive, and how they're sheltering these kids or hiding them from the authorities and shit. Like none of that stuff. Like, it's like, oh, these behaviors they're completely to the individual. It has nothing to do with the collective.
Yeah.
But okay. All right, cool. It's all convenient.
Today
Yes.
is April 4th.
Oh, it is? Okay.
The very day Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated.
Oh, and how you are carrying his sentiments forward so far.
In 1968.
Uh-huh.
On this day, if none other, we pay homage to the man who once talked about coming to Washington to cash a check. A check, he preached, which deplorably has come back marked insufficient funds.
When do you get past the rhetoric and start talking about the details? Come on.
Let's not get stuck on just the check. You see, my reparations journey has allowed me to develop a much broader view of remedy than I had as a teenager, as well as recognition that repair is not for the enslavement era alone, but for its living, continuing legacies that last down through to today. You see, more than black bodies were stolen.
What is your proposal?
I don't think we're going to get it.
And this is something else I from a previous congressional hearing I watched. I kept hearing the phrase, "It's not about writing a check. It's not about writing a check." And then they started listing off all these, social services or, education things and this, that, and I'm like,
that
that's
literally
about
require a check to be written to.
The taxpayer is going to be writing a check, figuratively or otherwise. We're talking about a monetary compensation, either in direct cash infusion or services paid for by the government.
Also, we can basically guarantee that reparations will be paid with taxpayer money, taxes that are paid by the people who are supposedly getting said reparations.
Right.
So how the fuck does that work?
Our name, our religion, our language, our history, our very peoplehood has been gutted.
You didn't even know your own national history until you read it in some kind of newspaper. You grew up all the way to the age of 16 or 17, but if you got any idea of any of this stuff, because you didn't care and weren't curious enough to look it up yourself. You got to college and you didn't know any about any of this stuff, even though by the time you got to college, you'd already been indoctrinated in some way into the Black Panther ideology of things. So what? None
And
of this
now-
affected you. Literally, none of this directly affected you, had any place in your mind whatsoever until somebody told you that you are in the inheritor of victimhood of dead people.
Yeah, and then you appropriated an African name, started wearing African garb, and now you are currently financially benefiting from all the things you're currently claiming you want reparations for. Like, come on, dude, you can't make this shit up.
The harms from the enslavement era and beyond were multifaceted. Thus, the remedies must be multifaceted as well. Indeed, a reparations settlement can be fashioned in as many forms as necessary to equitably address the incalculable injuries that have been sustained.
Okay,
Then name
give us
them.
one.
Yeah,
give us
name
one.
them. Come on.
Just one form.
Result of this crime against humanity.
Yeah, okay. Yes, and.
Thankfully, I'm no longer amongst the isolated talking about reparations, no longer ridiculed or ostracized. I've been in the reparations movement nearly 50 years now. The magic has long since worn off,
But sorry, I got to do the pause occasionally.
I have never been more optimistic.
Really? Because you said earlier that nobody was talking about this stuff, that everything is terrible. What? Now you're optimistic?
Wait a minute. She said she's been a part of this and talking about it for over 50 years.
She's looking great for 60 something or other.
Yeah, she said that no progress was made. Nobody has been talking about it. She has been getting nothing but scrutiny for the simple act of talking about it. And now she's bragging that the scrutiny about talking about it has disappeared, but she's still maintaining the fact that it's a controversial topic that somehow she's oppressed from talking about. Like, oh my God.
The issue of reparations is no longer fringe, but it is now center. The conversation is growing. There are now more faith organizations, sororities and fraternities, professional and social justice groups, and civil and human rights organizations than ever advancing reparations.
And we still have not made any fucking think about that for a second. She just listed off all those things now contributing to the idea of carrying this forward, and we have literally not taken a single step in the direction of actually making it happen. Like, that's not a bragging point. That's like Biden finally becoming president after all this time, like and still not accomplishing anything. It's just like, all right, you've been a politician all this time and you finally became president. What's the state of the world right now?
Yeah.
What are we looking at right now? How are Americans living now that you finally fucking made it here?
Okay, but here's the other thing too. So she's been doing this for over 50 years.
50.
I'll take her at her word. She's been doing it for half a century. You would think that at this point she'd at least have an elevator pitch of an idea of how to approach this problem. She's got 4 minutes left. So come on.
Congressional legislation is escalating.
Well, and again, this is a couple of years old now. And yes, a few years ago, there was a very high-profile Zoom call during lockdown congressional hearing on reparations that I watched live, and I think I did a commentary on at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what were the results?
Well, we'll get to a little bit of that later.
Okay.
The state of California is engaged in historic hearings.
Yeah, I think those led up to some kind of actual financial reparations in some cities or something. I know there was some experimental towns that decided to start issuing checks to people for some reason.
And racism is now gone in California?
Well, of course. There's no racism in California. It's the most progressive state in the country, obviously, you know.
Local jurisdictions are enthusiastically establishing commissions. Evanston, Illinois is a trailblazer. The U.S. Conference of Mayors. The Players Coalition of professional athletes, coaches, and owners across leagues.
Wow. Okay. And Tony Giff, Evanston, Illinois. That's okay. As soon as I read that, I'm like, yes, that is a town that's suddenly my memory, like Evanston, Illinois. Okay. Well, I'll look that up later, or I'll post something on Twitter after the fact.
Amalgamated Bank and many more have picked up the banner.
Then why are we so dour about this at the beginning? Like there was no way to move and nobody talks about it and on and on and on.
Past injustices are being uncovered.
Sure. there's nothing new under the sun except the history you don't know, like most of the history of America when you were 16 and onward in college.
White ally groups are committed to truth-telling.
Oh, white allies, those slightly higher versions of white people.
White
Even
allies
Ben &
group.
Jerry's ice cream has issued a call to other corporations to support reparations.
Oh, Ben and Jerry's, thank goodness.
Oh, you caught her looking at her notes?
Yeah. Well, hey, like I say, I can't, I don't hold against people on a TEDx. If I was having to stand in front of an audience and do a speech and everything else, my nerves alone would probably get me to go all over the place. So I don't hold it against her. If she had note cards, as several TEDx or TED Talks have done in the past, I don't fault anybody for that. I can understand it.
Well, to her Ben and Jerry's point,
yeah,
I don't remember exactly how the saying goes, but like essentially, if massive multi-million-dollar corporations, the one that you think are evil and responsible for a lot of the injustices, are on your side, then you're on the wrong side.
Well, it was not that long ago where somebody can correct me if I'm a little off here, but it was something to the effect of Ben and Jerry's put out a public statement talking about, I think it was about occupied land and kind of thing and stuff like that. And somebody immediately on Twitter said, well, then why don't you get off the land underneath your factories that was previously owned by Native Americans?
Yeah.
I mean, put your money where your mouth is, Ben and Jerry's. If you're going to start complaining about this, why not be the change you want to see? And of course, they didn't.
Well, also, too, like I said, the systems, the systems that were put in place to maintain the oppressions and stuff that obviously she's fighting against, like they were clearly motivated by money. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of like the motivator. Where's the money coming from? Obviously, large corporations and shareholders. Okay, so like I'm saying, if these companies are fully backing and supporting whatever cause you are currently running at the time, these evil corporations that are supposedly single-handedly responsible for maintaining the system you're fighting against, I don't understand how you don't see that as some kind of red flag.
Willful ignorance, I suppose, or just, convenient birds of a feather, I suppose.
It's like watching the local wolf build the gate around the sheep pen. It's like, what the fuck? It's just like, bro.
However, despite being on the front lines of this movement,
I
humbly admit, I don't have definitive answers to.
Of course you fucking don't. I'm leaving. I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
fucking finished.
All right, I'm not gonna play any more of this because
fuck me, dude.
She's got nothing. She's got nothing to add. She's had 50 years, and you don't even have again just the elevator pitch, just the high level points of this is what can be done.
Oh my god.
There's 2.5 minutes left of this. I'm not even gonna bother because I know Satsu's got a split.
What a
I want to get to this. I want to get to a much more studied and academic opinion on the entire deal. So this is Coleman Hughes. I'm not going to play the video. I'm going to read the article because playing the video I think might hit some copyright things or something, and I want to try to get through this as quick as I can. Opening statement on slavery reparations to the United States House Committee on the Judiciary, delivered 19th June, if you can believe it. It's the same day, just several years ago, on Juneteenth back in 2019. So I'm going to skip over a little bit of this. Nothing I'm about to say is meant to minimize the horror and brutality of slavery and Jim Crow. Racism is a bloody stain on this country's history, and I consider our failure to pay reparations directly to freed slaves after the Civil War to be one of the greatest injustices ever perpetrated by the U.S. government.
I agree.
But I worry that our desire to fix the past compromises our ability to fix the present. Think about what we're doing today. We're spending our time debating a bill, H.R. 40, that mentions slavery 25 times, but incarceration only once, in an era with no black slaves, but nearly 1 million black prisoners. A bill that doesn't mention homicide once, at a time when the Center for Disease Control reports homicide as the #1 cause of death for young black men. I'm not saying that acknowledging history doesn't matter. It does. I'm saying there's a difference between acknowledging history and allowing history to distract us from the problems we face today. In 2008, the House of Representatives formally apologized for slavery and Jim Crow. In 2009, the Senate did the same. Black people don't need another apology. We need safer neighborhoods and better schools. We need a less punitive criminal justice system. We need affordable health care. And none of these things can be achieved through reparations for slavery. Nearly everyone close to me told me not to testify today. They told me that even though I've only ever voted for Democrats, I'd be perceived as a Republican and therefore hated by half the country. Others told me that by distancing myself from Republicans, I would end up angering the other half of the country. And the sad truth is that they were both right. That's how suspicious we become of one another. That's how divided we are as a nation. If we were to pay reparations today, we would only divide the country further, making it harder to build the political coalitions required to solve the problems facing Black people today. We would insult many Black Americans by putting a price on the suffering of their ancestors, and we would turn the relationship between Black Americans and white Americans from a coalition into a transaction, from a union between citizens into a lawsuit between plaintiffs and defendants. What we should do is pay reparations to Black Americans who actually grew up under Jim Crow and were directly harmed by second-class citizenship, people like my grandparents. But paying reparations to all descendants of slaves is a mistake. Take me, for example. I was born 3 decades after the end of Jim Crow into a privileged household in the suburbs. I attended an Ivy League school. Yet I'm also descended from slaves who worked on Thomas Jefferson's Monticello plantation. So reparations for slavery would allocate federal resources to me, but not to an American with the wrong ancestry, even if that person is living paycheck to paycheck and working multiple jobs to support a family. You might call that justice. I call it justice for the dead at the price of justice for the living. I understand that reparations are about what people are owed, regardless of how well they're doing. I understand that. But the people who were owed for slavery are no longer here, and we're not entitled to collect on their debts. Reparations, by definition, are only given to victims. So the moment you give me reparations, you've made me into a victim without my consent. Audience member says, opt out. Back to Coleman Hughes. Not just that. You've made 1/3 of Black Americans who poll against reparations into victims without their consent. And Black Americans have fought too long for the right to define themselves to be spoken for in such a condescending manner. The question is not what America owes me by virtue of my ancestry. The question is what all Americans owe each other by virtue of being citizens of the same nation. And the obligation of citizenship is not transactional. It is not contingent on ancestry. It never expires, and it can't be paid off. For all these reasons, Bill H.R. 40 is a moral and political mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so...
I feel like he was pretty spot on with that one.
Yeah, like he said, and like we said, if you find people who are the direct victims of an unjust system or an unjust action, they, the individual, are owed reparations by the governing body. So whether it's a prison system that unjustly incarcerated someone, if it's by a government that put people into internment camps during war, if it's by a state or a jurisdiction that victimized someone under laws now defunct and illegal and unconstitutional, those individuals are owed reparations.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else who was not affected by that, did not experience that. I mean, what am I owed for someone in my family tree that was wronged? Someone that I had no direct experience with? You know, I mean, if there was an injustice, if I have a Scottish ancestor who was turned into an indentured servant, do I then go to the descendants of that family and say, you owe me this because that guy back then had a bad thing happen to him by people that were related to you? If that is the way we're going to operate, nothing will ever be resolved. The dead will never die, and we can never move on from the past.
Yeah, and like I was saying before, that's kind of the point. The way the democratic system is put together right now, they have created and cultivated a lot of these government assistance programs that basically ensure that people who are held down, and I said people, not people of color, not Black people or Asian people or whatever, everybody who is subservient to the system that has been put in place is incentivized to stay in that place. That's how they keep their votes. That's how they keep these neighborhoods in the state that they are. That's how they ensure that the correct amount of poverty and just disproportionate whatever you want to put into it is laid in place to make sure that these people have to rely on them in order to survive. That's why the system is set that way. A form of reparations that these people are asking for literally cannot exist under this system, because it would literally require the government to take away the necessity, of you needing them. Like the fact that you need them would have to be removed, and they would have to replace that with some other system to help these people who are struggling maintain themselves. And they will not do that under any circumstances.
And like Coleman said, if you brand officially an entire demographic or even an individual as being inherently a victim, that your circumstances, your situation is out of your hands, that you have no agency, that you're simply a pawn in greater schemes forever and even before you were born, all you're going to do is incentivize not taking responsibility for your own actions. You're going to diminish someone's drive and ability and ambition because they think that they can never make it, that they are scarred for life, and that's it. And you'll just ingrain racial conflict, difference, and disparity in people's minds and in behavior going forward. You will not solve the problem by going back and implementing the same philosophies of the past, but just on those demographics you like. What happened to learning from the past? Because somebody did something terrible in the past does not mean that now it's your turn to be the terrible person, or to try to brand it as a virtuous act because you're getting. This is less about reparations now than it is about revenge.
Well, yeah, and that's my biggest problem with a majority of activists, groups and stuff nowadays. Is like the idea of reaching some form of justice to resolve the problem has been eliminated, and you can see this heavily in like the gaming community now with a lot of stuff that's going on. It's just like we have a perception that the games industry has been this place that has been exclusionary towards us, and everything that you make in the idea of supremacy and with the goal to specifically represent people like you. So now it's our turn to do the things that we perceive you are doing. Meanwhile, all of these companies have been making these games because they are passionate about them, because they want to tell a story about X, Y, and Z. But to the activists, they're like, no, this is what you were doing. So now we're going to do that too, as to show you. And when we make a new character, it's not so much we want to make this character so it represents us and it makes us feel better. We want to make sure that you're upset about it. You need to be upset about it. You need to be angry that this exists. And if you're not, we'll just pretend that you are, because it still makes us feel better.
Yeah. The goal is not to make a better product. The goal is to tick off other people and revel in the enjoyment of their suffering.
Yeah, well, and that's why
you ever see those posts, and they're all over the place. It's like, this new show comes out, this new game comes out, it has some element to it that's controversial, and you see somebody say, "Oh boy,
exactly what I was about to say."
I can't wait to see the piss babies moan over this."
Oh yeah,
because you're a sadist.
Yeah.
The people who say that are emotional and social sadists. They want to see. They're not looking for a good game. They're not looking for a quality product or a good outcome. They're looking to watch other people suffer and moan so they can feel superior.
Yeah, so they're just like, yeah,
ridiculous.
You're getting what I got. You get to feel how I felt now.
Right.
And it's
misery
like,
loves company.
Yeah, nobody made you feel that way. Nobody's like doing those things, but or the comments where it's just like, oh my God, look at all the man babies crying in the comments, and then you scroll through and it's just 7,000 other comments that say that.
Yeah, I love the people that do it preemptively. Like, I can't wait for it. Like, they're sitting there just salivating, waiting for somebody to say something that they can latch onto and say, "Ha, see, you're the bad person and I'm the good person." Yeah,
and they're just like, "Oh my God, look, the fanboys are fuming," and then they share a screenshot of a comment that has 2 likes that was posted 8 hours ago, and it's just like, okay.
Anyway, we're coming up exactly on 2 hours, which is a pretty good time for a stream. So before we get out of here, I just need to remind everybody, this is my friend Satsu, aka Chef Tyrone. founder, owner, and CEO of Oishi Fried Chicken LLC, featuring a new line of signature spice mixes. Chef Tyrone's homemade blends are the perfect gateway to delicious fried chicken or any other protein you might prefer. These recipes were painstakingly tested in Tyrone's home kitchen to bring you all the fantastic flavors you and your family can enjoy. The current flavor lineup includes original, spicy, lemon garlic herb, barbecue rub, and taco seasoning. You can buy individual packs of your favorite flavors or save some money with a variety bundle, all through the online store. And Oishi Fried Chicken ships nationwide. Go to www.oishifc.com and order today. So there you go, everybody. Be sure to check out oishifc.com for Satsu's signature spice mixes. You can find also a link at the top of the chat box to the fundraiser. Sorry, my brain's going all over the place. To help Satsu go to a festival where he can share his wares. Also, I should remind, I forgot to, all of Satsu's particular links are in the description. The Satsu2Cents YouTube channel, his Twitter account, and the website for his business. So take a look at those when you have the opportunity. Anything else you'd like to mention before we get out of here, Satsu?
Oh, sorry, my mic was muted because I was talking to my wife. No, that's it. That's basically all the information you need to know. Like I said, we're not doing this until late July. It's end of the month. So you guys still have time to support. I am mass producing my spices and seasonings now so I can be ready for the event. So if you do order in the near future, you will get your stuff at a reasonable time frame because like I got it in bulk now. So any orders that come in, I'm just shipping them out literally the next day. So any support helps. Share it, all that good stuff.
Yeah, Satsu's been communicating with me offline about business card designs and slogans and everything else. And he's making sure that when the time comes, he's not caught flat-footed. So as far as orders or interest from other investors or parties or clients, he's ready to go when the time comes, and he won't be doing a lot of catching up to do. So credit to you, Satsu, on your hard work, and I wish you the best of luck. And Thank you. Hope you guys out there will support Satsu either by donating directly or buying his products especially, or sharing the stuff out in the world. And beyond that, if you guys have any thoughts on the stream today, whether it's reparations, Juneteenth in general, or otherwise, put a comment in the comments when you have the opportunity after the stream is posted. It apparently helps out the algorithm or something, I'm told, at least. If you like this kind of thing, please leave a like as well on the way out. And did you know that I have a Discord server? Well, I do have a Discord server. If you'd like to join the Discord server, a link to the Discord server is in the chat right now. Just click on that link. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just need to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you're not a bot, or actually a person, and have earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is... What's today's secret word, Satsu?
Reparations.
Reparations. Just say hello, reparations. And I'll know that you actually watched the show. Beyond that, there will be a TED Excellence tomorrow as well, an actual TED Excellence with a bingo card and everything. So look out for that on the Discord server elsewise. Also, if you haven't already seen it, my recent panel discussion for Living on Borrowed Crime with Misery Machine, Dave's Lemonade, Morbid Curiosity, and True Red Crime is up right now. It's got a really good response so far. Looking forward and already planning for the next one sometime late next month. So look forward to that. But if you have any interest in true crime or know someone that does, please direct them towards that and that series. I'd appreciate it if you do. And with that, everyone, hope you enjoyed the show. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to Satsu, thank you guys so much for your generosity. It's very much appreciated. Hope everybody has a good rest of their Juneteenth if you have it off. If you don't, I hope the rest of your work day goes well. Hope the rest of your week goes well as well. And otherwise, I hope you're all safe and well. And if you're not well, please get well soon. And we will see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.